I didn't understand how humiliating silence could be until I heard it happening behind me. It wasn't the silence of people thinking. It wasn't the silence of a room waiting for the next sentence. It was the kind of silence people use when they've decided you are no longer safe to be seen with. The kind of silence that turns you into furniture. The kind that says, without words, "Don't make us pick a side." I was standing at my desk when Iris arrived. She didn't walk in the way new employees walk in. No hesitation, no scanning for who mattered. She moved like the building already belonged to her. Heels sharp, posture perfect, hair glossy in that "I have a personal brand" way. Behind her, a cluster of executives followed in a neat line, like they were orbiting a star. 23 years old, a business degree still warm from a printer somewhere, and somehow she had the entire executive wing trailing her like obedient ducklings. She stopped in the center of our open workspace, smiled broadly, and lifted her hands like she was about to announce a product launch. "Everyone," she said, "I'd like you to meet Mona." She gestured toward me as if she were presenting an outdated office printer. "Mona will be handling our legacy accounts, and starting today," she continued, voice sweet and clean, "she reports directly to me." The room went still. No one looked at me. Not Trent from legal, not Kip from accounting, not Darlene, who had shared lunch with me every Wednesday for a decade. People stared at shoes, tablet screens, their own hands, anything but my face. Our CEO, Gerald, stepped forward and placed a supportive hand on Iris's shoulder, like she was a scholarship recipient and he was proud to be pictured with her. "We need fresh energy in Europe," Gerald said. "New thinking. Aggressive growth. Mona can help you understand the history while you lead us forward." It hit me with a strange clarity. I wasn't being replaced. I was being relabeled. History. While I was still breathing. Iris nodded, like she had just been granted a kingdom. "The corner desk will be yours," she told me, pointing toward a cramped space near the supply closet. "And I need this office cleared by lunch." My office. My space. The glass-walled room I had worked in for 16 years. The one with the whiteboard that still had faint ghosts of old strategies that had carried us through bad quarters. The wall where our biggest client's thank you letter was framed. The one they sent after I saved their campaign during a natural disaster, when half our team was out and the entire account was on fire. I didn't argue. I didn't protest. I didn't beg. Not because I was defeated, because I was listening. "Understood," I said, and somehow my voice stayed steady even as my hands wanted to tremble. 3 hours later, I watched maintenance workers carry my plaques and framed awards in a cardboard box, while Iris stood in the doorway directing them with the crisp confidence of someone who had never carried anything heavier than a laptop. "That bulky desk goes too," she said, wrinkling her nose. "It's positively ancient." The desk my team had gifted me after we won Department of the Year. The desk I had cried at once, quietly, at 2 a.m. after I closed a deal that saved 40 jobs. They rolled it out as if it were junk. My new workspace had a chair that wobbled and a computer that wheezed when it booted up, like it resented being asked to still function. Then my phone rang. "Howie here," he said, voice tight. Howie had been my direct report for 8 years. He had grown from nervous junior analyst to a confident team lead under my guidance. He used to ask my opinion before he made a big move. He used to drop by my office to talk through difficult clients, and I would show him how to listen for what wasn't being said. "Mona," he said, "I'm sorry, but Iris called a team meeting in the Willow Room." "When?" I asked, even though I already felt the answer forming. "Right now," he said. "She said it's just for the team leads." I stared at my inbox, at the calendar invite I had not received, at the empty space where my role used to exist. I was being excluded from a meeting with my own team, my brain said calmly, as if narrating a documentary. "No problem," I lied. I hung up, And as if the universe wanted to make sure the knife went in clean, a department-wide email landed in my inbox. Subject line: Growth. Strategy. Implementation. The body of the message was a parade of buzzwords: moving beyond outdated methods, aligning with forward-looking leadership, accelerating global expansion. Attached, a 16-page presentation. I opened it. My breath caught. Not because the ideas were similar to what I had proposed 6 months ago, because they were mine. My market targets for Portugal, my penetration plan for Greece, my exact risk mitigation model. In some places, entire sentences were identical. She hadn't even rewritten the phrasing. She had simply changed the name on the cover. The same proposals Gerald had called too ambitious when I presented them. The same proposals he had rejected with a polite smile and a "let's revisit next year." But today, under Iris's name, they were visionary. At 4:30, a sticky note appeared on my desk. My office, 5 p.m. sharp, Iris. I walked into my old office at 4:59 because if she was going to treat me like an employee, I would at least let her know I understood punctuality. Iris was leaning against my old desk, tapping on her phone. She didn't look up. "Sit," she said, still staring at her screen. I remained standing. Finally, she glanced up, like she had just noticed I was human. "Your European strategy proposal was well received today," she said. "You mean my European strategy," I replied. Her smile didn't move. "Your research was useful groundwork," she said. "But groundwork isn't architecture, Mona. I modernized and elevated your basic concepts into something actionable." "I saw my words verbatim on 3 slides," I said. "That's a serious accusation," she replied, setting her phone down. "Especially from someone in your position." "My position," I repeated. She tilted her head. People who stay at one company too long often become territorial, change-resistant. Gerald understands this transition might be difficult for you. "Is that why you excluded me from my own team meeting?" I asked. She sighed theatrically, like I was exhausting her. "I needed candid feedback about departmental leadership," she said. People aren't always comfortable speaking honestly with their former supervisor present. Former supervisor. The implication landed with the weight of a body. She wasn't just moving me aside. She was building a story about me. A story where I was the problem. "We're restructuring next month," Iris continued, voice casual. "Some roles will be eliminated, others will evolve. Your future here depends entirely on your ability to adapt." The threat was clean. Corporate threats always are. They wear polite language like perfume. I held her gaze. "Is there anything else?" I asked. "Yes," she said, brightening. "The Winterman presentation tomorrow. I'll handle it." My throat tightened. The Winterman Group was my client for 16 years. Their CEO, Oliver Winterman, had specifically requested me every year for their annual review. We weren't just vendor and client. We were partners. We had survived disasters together. I had answered calls at midnight when their board panicked. I had flown out during storms when campaigns needed emergency repair. "Oliver asked for me," I said. "I spoke with Oliver this morning," she replied. "He understands the new direction." The way she said it was the way people speak when they've already decided you no longer get to have your own relationships. "That's all," she said, attention back on her phone. I walked out. As I passed the glass-walled willow room, my team was still seated inside. Conversation died as I went by. Eyes flicked up, then away, like they didn't want to be caught noticing me. Whatever Iris had told them had already started working. I reached my cramped desk and saw another email. From HR. Subject: Performance Improvement Plan. Confidential. A formal PIP. The first step toward termination. The document listed resistance to new leadership, territorial behavior, failure to align with strategic vision. I stared at it for a long moment. I had given this company my 20s, my 30s, and most of my 40s. I had postponed having children because there was always another expansion. I had worked through pneumonia twice. I had missed my grandfather's funeral to save a key account. And now, a woman who had been here for 3 weeks was writing my obituary in corporate language. I shut down my computer, I gathered my bag, and I left without saying goodbye. In my car, I sat for 20 minutes, hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing. What I felt surprised me. Not rage, not grief, clarity. They thought they were watching a woman being gradually erased. They expected tears, outbursts, a resignation letter. They had no idea who they were dealing with. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't vent. I didn't call friends to ask if I was crazy. I opened my personal laptop, and I started building a file. Not a complaint, not a memo. A file. A very specific file. Because here's what people like Iris misunderstand. They think power is your office, your title, your direct reports. They think if they remove those things, you become harmless. But the real power, the kind that matters, is something else entirely. It's memory. It's patterns. It's relationships. It's the ability to connect dots that no org chart will ever show. My name is Mona Teller, and until a few weeks ago, I was Senior Director of International Growth at a marketing company that had recently merged with our biggest competitor. The merger brought change, yes. But none of us expected this. No transition, no handover, no respect for institutional knowledge, just a bright, polished, new face placed directly above me, and a room full of people too afraid to look me in the eye. I joined the company straight out of college, back when we occupied half a floor downtown and the heating barely worked. We now had offices in 11 countries. I personally opened 7. That means something, not in the way executives like to pretend it means something. Not in the "we value loyalty" way they put on slides. It means I knew everything. I knew how deals were made and how they were protected. I knew which clients were stable and which were secretly one bad meeting away from leaving. I knew who in legal actually understood international regulations and who just liked hearing their own voice in meetings. I knew the company's heartbeat, and I knew my team. I didn't earn their respect by demanding it. I earned it by being the person who showed up. When Bella's mother was diagnosed with cancer, I rearranged her schedule without asking for favors in return. When Penn's apartment flooded, I helped him find temporary housing and quietly covered his workload until he could breathe again. When Howie struggled with his first major presentation, I stayed late with him for a week until he could deliver it without shaking. I knew their kids' names, their anniversaries, their dreams beyond this place. Iris knew none of that. To Iris, they were resources, pieces, chessboard material. And she moved them the way someone moves pieces when they don't care what breaks as long as they win. During her second week, she called Howie into her office. He emerged an hour later looking like he had swallowed something sharp. The next day, he presented a new approach to our Nordic markets at the department meeting, an approach I had been privately mentoring him on for months. He spoke confidently, but his eyes never met mine. People clapped. Iris smiled, like she had discovered him. The same pattern repeated with Bella, with Penn. One by one, collaborative work that had been built through long nights and quiet conversations was reframed as individual breakthroughs inspired by Iris's modern leadership. Then Darlene leaned in during what used to be our comfortable Wednesday lunch and whispered, "She asked about your management style." My chopsticks paused. "What did she ask?" I said. Darlene stared into her salad like the lettuce had answers. "She asked if you micromanage," Darlene said. "If you take credit for other people's work. If you resist innovation." "What did you say?" I asked. Darlene swallowed hard. "I tried to be diplomatic," she admitted. "But Mona, she records everything." My spine chilled. She had her phone on the table, Darlene whispered, recording our entire conversation. Iris wasn't just rewriting the present. She was building an archive designed to bury me. By week 3, my team stopped coming to me with questions. Emails went unanswered. Client calls vanished from my calendar. I was being ghosted within my own department. Then Oliver Winterman called me directly. He didn't email. He called. That's how serious he was. "Mona," he said, confused, "why am I hearing you won't be leading our account anymore?" I took a slow breath. "You heard that?" "Iris Palmer called my COO," he said. "She said you're moving into strategic planning and she'll be our point person. Mona, we've worked with you for 16 years. We renewed our contract because of you." My jaw tightened. "Oliver," I said carefully, "this decision was made above me. I wasn't consulted." There was a pause, the kind where a client is deciding whether you're still safe to trust. "We specifically requested you in our renewal," Oliver said. "If you're not involved, we need to reconsider our options." That sentence can destroy a quarter. I walked straight to Gerald. He was distracted, preoccupied, the way executives become when they've already decided a narrative and don't want inconvenient facts. "Iris has innovative approaches," he said. "Give her a chance, Mona. Change can be positive." I stared at him, realizing something I hadn't wanted to believe. Gerald wasn't blind. He was dazzled, and dazzled men make dangerous decisions. That evening, I watched through conference room glass as Iris presented my European strategy to the executive team. My slides. My data, my conclusions. Her name on the cover. Executives nodded approvingly. Gerald applauded at the end. Someone said, "This is the kind of leadership we need." I should have felt anger. Instead, something else washed over me, a clean, cold clarity. I had been playing by rules that no longer applied, following a social contract Iris had never signed. So I went home and pulled out my external hard drive, 15 years of archives, every project, every presentation, every email thread that mattered. Not because I expected betrayal, because I believed in protecting institutional knowledge. What I found stunned even me. It wasn't just that Iris was taking credit, it was that the way she moved looked familiar. Not familiar like, "I've seen this personality before." Familiar like, "I've seen this pattern in the market." Strategy shifts that look brilliant short-term, but quietly destroy long-term client trust. Aggressive targets that force teams to cannibalize relationships. Growth that isn't growth, but extraction. I worked through the night. I cross-referenced. I connected. I built a timeline. By morning, my hands were trembling, not from fear, from certainty. Iris had made a critical mistake. She thought my power was my office, my title, my team. She didn't realize my power was 2 decades of watching this company move and knowing what certain moves always led to. I arrived early, before the receptionist, before the cleaning crew finished. I placed a single manila folder on Iris's desk. On top, a note. "For your review, historical growth. Strategy. Outcomes. No threats, no insults. Just an invitation to look at reality." Then I left for my 8 a.m. client call, the one remaining meeting still on my calendar. The small mercy of a calendar Iris hadn't fully erased yet. When I returned at 10:30, something had happened. People huddled in tight groups. Conversations stopped when I passed. Security guards stood outside the executive wing. Darlene hurried toward me, eyes wide. "What did you do?" she whispered. "I shared context," I said. She swallowed. Iris ran into Gerald's office, screaming. 20 minutes ago. Then security came. They're all in there now. The entire executive team. I nodded and walked to my wobbly desk as if it were just another Tuesday. "Aren't you worried?" Darlene asked, following. About what? I said. She gestured vaguely toward the executive hallway, where tension buzzed like a live wire. No, I said simply. I'm not worried. At noon, an email arrived. Meeting requested. Executive conference room. Immediate. The walk to the executive floor felt surreal. Eyes followed me. Some curious, some fearful, some guilty. I found Gerald seated at the head of the table, flanked by our legal counsel and HR director. Iris was nowhere to be seen. Sit down, Mona, Gerald said, expression unreadable. I chose a seat directly across from him and placed my hands calmly on the table. The file you left for Iris, Gerald began. Where did you get that information? From our company archives, I said, plus publicly available financial records. Legal counsel, a stern woman named Wilma, leaned forward. You've made extremely serious allegations. I haven't made allegations, I corrected. I compiled data. The patterns speak for themselves. Gerald rubbed his temples. You're claiming Iris implemented strategies at her previous company that led to collapse, and now she's replicating those same strategies here? The data supports that conclusion, I said. Wilma shook her head. That's absurd. Why would someone sabotage their employer? I met her gaze. 3 months before her previous company declared bankruptcy, I said, Iris received a substantial payment from an investment group that later acquired their client list for pennies. The same investment group that now owns 30% of this company following the merger. Silence fell hard. Gerald's voice lowered. You understand what you're implying. I'm not implying, I said. I'm showing numbers, dates, and transactions on public record. HR cleared her throat. Iris claims you're retaliating because of the PIP. I opened my laptop. Would you like original sources? I indexed everything. Gerald's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then stood abruptly. Wait here, he said. When the door closed behind them, I remained perfectly still. Through the glass wall, I could see them huddled with executives I didn't recognize, likely from our parent company. 20 minutes passed. When Gerald returned alone, he looked older. Iris has been suspended pending investigation, he said, sinking into his chair. The Merger Oversight Committee is flying in tonight. I see, I replied. He studied me with new eyes. You've been with us 20 years. 22, I corrected. Why didn't you come to me directly? He asked. I considered him. The man who applauded my work when it was packaged by someone younger. The man who let Iris put me on a PIP. Would you have believed me over the rising star who promised to double European market share in 6 months? I asked. His silence answered. You authorized her to dismantle my team, I continued. You applauded when she presented my strategies as hers. Gerald winced. I thought, he began. You thought she was the future, I finished. And I was the past. He exhaled, defeated. What do you want, Mona? He asked. Respect, I said. Not just for me, for everyone who actually builds things in this company. He nodded slowly. That's reasonable. And I want Winterman back today, I added, voice firm, before their reconsideration deadline. Gerald didn't hesitate. Done. I stood to leave, but he stopped me. The file, he said quietly. How long have you been working on it? I looked at him. I haven't been working on it, I said. I've been paying attention. As I left the executive floor, my phone chimed with messages from team members who had suddenly remembered my existence. I ignored them, because loyalty that returns only when it becomes safe is not loyalty, it's survival. By evening, Iris's name had been removed from the directory. Her office, my old office, sat empty. The abstract art she had hung was already gone, like it had never existed. At home, I poured a glass of wine and let the adrenaline fade. My hands trembled slightly, the body finally catching up to the day. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello, is this Mona Teller?" a woman asked. "Yes." "This is Charlotte Weber," she said, "chairperson of the Merger Oversight Committee. I'd like to discuss your findings in person tomorrow morning." My stomach tightened. "Of course," I said. "I should inform you," Charlotte continued, "that Iris has retained legal counsel. She's claiming wrongful termination and defamation." There it was, the counterattack. Of course, Iris wouldn't go quietly. "The information can be independently verified," I said evenly. "So you say," Charlotte replied, tone cooling. "We'll need to review this thoroughly. In the meantime, I've instructed Gerald to place you on administrative leave." The room seemed to tilt. "Administrative leave?" I repeated. "It's standard," she said. "We need to avoid any perception of conflict while we review both sides." Both sides. As if this were a simple office disagreement, not a pattern of corporate sabotage. "I understand," I managed. "We'll expect you at 9, Charlotte said. "Bring all relevant materials." After I hung up, I sat motionless, staring at the wall. In one swift move, they had equalized us, accuser and accused. Then the doorbell rang. I opened it to see Howie standing on my porch, shifting nervously. "I should have stood up for you," he blurted. I let him inside without comment. "Is it true?" he asked, following me to the kitchen. "About Iris. About her last company." "You tell me," I said. "You worked on her projections. Did anything strike you as odd?" Howie looked down. "The Nordic targets," he admitted. "They're impossible without sacrificing long-term relationships." "And when you said that?" I asked. "She said you made us too cautious," he said quietly. "Too comfortable with modest growth." "And what did you think?" I asked. He hesitated. "I thought maybe she was right." His honesty stung, but I respected it. "The Oversight Committee is coming tomorrow," I said. "I've been placed on administrative leave." "Same as Iris." Howie's eyes widened. "That's insane." "It's convenient," I corrected, "for people who don't want to upset investors." He looked shaken. "Tell me what to do. How can I help?" I studied him. He had abandoned me when Iris arrived. Yes. But he was also the first to come back, not because it was safe, but because his conscience finally won. "Why did you come here tonight, Howie?" I asked. He swallowed. "Because I was wrong. Because we all were. And because I've worked with you for 8 years. I know who you really are." I nodded slowly. "Then that's what I need," I said. People who know who I really am. The next morning, the Oversight Committee meeting filled our largest conference room. Charlotte Weber sat at the head of the table, sharp-featured, controlled. Beside her sat a polished man in an expensive suit, Iris's attorney. His smile was professional in the way predators are polite. Charlotte began without pleasantries. "Miss Teller," she said, "we've reviewed your file. Miss Palmer's counsel claims you misrepresented data to create a false narrative due to personal animosity." My heart remained steady. My body had already survived the worst part, being erased. This was just noise. "Furthermore," Charlotte continued, "they have submitted evidence suggesting you resisted necessary changes, underperformed in your role, and attempted to undermine new leadership." I saw the play. Iris had been building a case against me from day one, recording lunches, collecting fragments, turning normal disagreements into patterns. Charlotte slid a document across the table. "I should inform you," she said. "Miss Palmer has offered to drop legal action if you retract your claims and resign immediately." The attorney's smile widened slightly. A resignation letter, already prepared, heavy paper, expensive ink. The room went silent. Faces around the table were pale. Gerald avoided my gaze. My hand reached for the letter. I lifted it, scanned it slowly, then set it back down. "This is quite thorough," I said calmly. "Prepared in advance, I assume?" The attorney nodded. "We wanted a smooth transition." "Smooth," I repeated. "For whom exactly?" Charlotte cleared her throat. "Miss Teller, actually," I said, cutting in gently, "this isn't difficult at all." I folded my hands. "I won't be signing it." The attorney's smile faltered. "I strongly advise you to reconsider." "I look forward to reviewing your evidence," I replied. "All of it." Charlotte nodded, and assistants distributed thick folders. I opened mine. Emails taken out of context. Performance metrics selectively presented. Statements from team members that looked edited, sanitized, strategically vague. "As you can see," the attorney said, "Miss Palmer documented a pattern that predates her arrival. Your file was retaliatory." I flipped through pages slowly, nodding as if I were considering them. Then I reached into my bag and placed my own folders on the table. One for each person in the room. "What's this?" Charlotte asked. "Context," I said simply. They began to read. Inside were full email threads, not cherry-picked excerpts. Full performance dashboards showing consistent growth. And most importantly, notarized statements from my team. Because after Howie left my house, he didn't just go home. He went to Bella, to Penn, to others. And he told them the truth. That Iris had warned them to distance themselves. That she claimed I was being quietly managed out. That she played them against one another. Bella spoke first. "She told me Mona was being pushed into early retirement," Bella said. "She said I should stay close to new leadership if I wanted to advance." Penn nodded. "She told me there was a confidential performance issue with Mona that she couldn't discuss, but that I should align with her." Howie added, voice tight, "She told each of us the others had concerns about Mona's management." The attorney stood, sharp. "These statements are coerced." "They're notarized," I said, "given freely with witnesses." Charlotte's eyes moved slowly across the documents. "This still doesn't address the core claim," she said, "that your file on Miss Palmer's previous company is vindictive fabrication." "No," I agreed calmly. "For that, we need outside verification." I stood and walked to the door. I opened it. A man in his 50s stepped in, wearing a visitor badge. His posture was careful, as if he had lived through corporate storms and learned to avoid attention unless necessary. "This is Edward Torres," I said, "former CFO at Miss Palmer's previous company." The attorney's composure cracked. "This is outrageous. We weren't informed of additional witnesses." Edward sat down. "I was terminated 3 months before the company collapsed," he said evenly, after raising concerns about suspicious strategy shifts. "When Mona contacted me with the patterns she identified, I recognized them immediately." Charlotte leaned forward. "Mr. Torres, are you claiming Miss Palmer deliberately undermined your company?" "I'm stating the strategies she advocated were identical to the ones that bankrupted us," Edward said, "despite multiple warnings about long-term consequences. And she received a substantial consulting fee from the investment group that ultimately acquired our client list." The energy in the room shifted. Gerald finally spoke. "We need financial compliance involved," he said, voice strained. The attorney was texting furiously. "My client rejects these baseless accusations," he snapped. Mr. Torres was terminated for performance issues. His testimony is motivated by grievances. Edward smiled thinly. "Actually, I was offered severance to sign a non-disparagement agreement regarding the company. That agreement doesn't prevent me from discussing individual actions, particularly when those actions may constitute financial impropriety. Charlotte turned to the attorney. Does Miss Palmer wish to respond in person? The attorney's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, expression souring. My client is unavailable at present. Charlotte closed her folder. Then we proceed with a full investigation, she said. The meeting adjourned in a blur of whispers and urgent calls. I remained seated as the room emptied, feeling strangely hollow. This wasn't victory. Not yet. Investigations can be slowed, evidence can be reframed, powerful people can turn truth into complicated narratives. Charlotte paused at the door and looked back at me with new interest. 22 years at one company, she mused. That's rare. Loyalty used to matter, I said. It still does, she replied. To some of us. She gathered her papers. You'll remain on administrative leave, she said. Full pay, benefits. Standard procedure. How long? I asked. Hard to say, she admitted. Complex. The unspoken message was clear. This could drag on. Delay until momentum fades. Until outrage cools. Until people move on. I nodded. I understand. As I rose to leave, Charlotte stopped me. That file, she said. How did you connect those dots? I considered my answer. I spent my career observing patterns, I said. In markets, in people, in systems. Some patterns only become visible with time. And patience, Charlotte added. Yes, I said. Patience. 2 weeks passed. The investigation moved behind closed doors. I remained in limbo. Neither terminated nor reinstated. Iris didn't return, but there were no announcements. The silence was strategic. On Friday evening, I was in my garden, tending plants I had neglected for years while I poured my life into corporate goals. The doorbell rang. I opened it to find Gerald on my porch, looking uncomfortable in the way men do when they're about to ask you to accept injustice politely. May I come in? He asked. I led him to my kitchen without comment. He declined coffee. He didn't want comfort. He wanted compliance. The investigation has stalled, he admitted. I'm not surprised, I said. The investment group is applying pressure, he continued. They're threatening to withdraw support if we pursue this further. The board is concerned about stock implications. There it was, the familiar corporate calculus where ethics yields to economics. So Iris gets away with it, I said flatly. Gerald winced. She won't be returning. That's something, I said. He slid a folder onto my counter. We're prepared to offer a generous severance package, he said. Of course you are, I replied. Please understand our position, he said. They control 30% of our shares. You can ignore sabotage, I said. That's exactly what you're doing. Gerald's jaw tightened. The board meets Monday. This is the best I could negotiate. After he left, I didn't open the folder. I poured a glass of wine and went back to my garden. There is something honest about nurturing living things. They don't care about politics. They don't rewrite your history. They either grow or they don't. As dusk fell, my phone rang. Edward Torres. They're burying it, he said without preamble. I know, I replied. They reached out to me, Edward said, offered a consulting contract to refresh my recollection. Are you taking it? I asked. He laughed bitterly. No, but it won't matter. They'll find someone who will. We sat in silence for a moment, two professionals watching justice slip away in real time. What will you do now? Edward asked. I looked at the seedlings pushing through soil. I'm going to water my tomatoes, I said. Then I added, voice calm, and then I'm going to finish what I started. Monday morning dawned bright. Instead of staying home as instructed, I dressed in my most confident suit and drove to the office. The security guard smiled and waved me through. No one had removed my access. Interesting. The office buzzed more than usual. People stopped talking when they saw me. Surprise flashed across faces like a ripple. I walked straight to the executive floor. Outside the boardroom, Charlotte was speaking quietly with Gerald and several board members. Gerald spotted me first. His expression shifted from shock to alarm. "Mona," he hissed, stepping toward me, "you're not supposed to be here." "I know," I replied calmly. "That's why I came." Charlotte stepped forward, composed. "Miss Teller, this meeting is closed." "Of course," I said, nodding once. "I only have one document to submit, something the board should review before voting." I handed Charlotte a sealed envelope. She didn't open it. "What is this?" "The missing piece," I said. "The reason I was so certain about Iris's connection to the investment group." Gerald reached for the envelope. "I'll make sure they review it." "Open it now," I said softly. Something in my tone made them pause. Charlotte broke the seal and pulled out a single page. Board members gathered around, reading over her shoulder. I watched their reactions like a weather report. Widened eyes, sharp inhales, one man stepping back as if the paper were hot. "Is this verified?" Charlotte asked, her voice uncharacteristically unsteady. "Every detail," I said. "I spent the last 2 weeks securing documentation." Gerald looked physically ill. "Why didn't you present this initially?" he asked. "Because I needed to see how far certain parties would go to protect their interests," I replied. "Now I know." Charlotte's assistant took the page with careful hands. "The board needs to review this in private," Charlotte said. I nodded and turned to leave. "Mona," Gerald called after me. "Where are you going?" I smiled, the first real smile in weeks. "To clean out my desk," I said. "I won't be needing it anymore." Behind me, the boardroom door opened. Voices rose. Someone demanded immediate legal counsel. Someone else said, "Get compliance on the phone now." By noon, the news spread through the company like a wildfire. The investment group that engineered our merger, the same group that acquired Iris's previous company's client list, was not what it appeared. It was a complex shell structure, and the ultimate control traced back to our main competitor. Iris hadn't just been an ambitious young executive, she had been a planted operative. A long-term corporate espionage strategy disguised as modern leadership. Strategies designed to weaken companies from within, to fracture client trust, to create natural failure, to acquire valuable portfolios at a discount. And in my envelope, the document that broke everything open was the internal correspondence that connected the Shell Corporation's ultimate beneficiaries to decision-makers inside our merger. Not a theory, not a hunch, a chain, names. Dates, transfers, signatures, the kind of truth that doesn't argue. My phone rang continuously. Reporters, board members, regulatory officials. I declined all calls. I focused on packing. I placed my coffee mug into a small box. Darlene appeared at my desk, breathless. "The investment group's representatives just left," she whispered. "Security escorted them out." I nodded, continuing to pack. "Gerald called an emergency all-staff meeting," she said. "And there are people from the SEC in the conference room." "That was quick," I murmured. Darlene hesitated. "Everyone says you saved the company." I closed my box. "I just paid attention," I said. "That's all." "Are you really leaving?" she asked, voice tight. I lifted my box. "My work here is done," I said. As I walked toward the exit, my team gathered in the hallway, forming an awkward, guilty guard of honor. Howie stepped forward. "Where will you go?" he asked. "I've received several interesting offers," I replied. "Turns out exposing corporate espionage makes you marketable." He swallowed. "Will you stay for the meeting? Gerald wants to acknowledge you." I shook my head. "Some acknowledgments come too late to matter," I said. Outside, spring air hit my face like a cleansing. I placed the box into my car and looked up at the building where I had spent most of my adult life. My revenge wasn't getting Iris fired. It wasn't exposing the Shell Corporation. It wasn't even saving the company from a hostile takeover disguised as a merger. My revenge was walking away on my own terms, with my reputation not only intact, but enhanced. While Iris faced criminal charges and the people behind her scrambled to protect themselves, I had offers from companies who suddenly understood the value of someone who notices patterns others miss. Some people think revenge is loud. It isn't. Sometimes the greatest revenge is quiet. It's becoming so untouchable that the people who tried to erase you have to live with the fact they failed. Because the truth is this: a title can be reassigned, an office can be taken, a team can be manipulated. But competence, memory, and patience, those things don't disappear just because someone younger walks in and demands you report to them. And if you're listening to this because you've been pushed aside, erased, treated like the past while you're still building, remember this: reaction isn't the same as response. The loudest people don't always win. The ones who pay attention do. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let them underestimate you, right up until the moment they open the file you left behind.